Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Charlene Aaron. American air carriers are avoiding Ukrainian airspace near the Russian border after a Malaysian airplane was shot down in the area Thursday. At least 298 people were on board. Most of the passengers were Dutch, but some Americans may be among the dead. Russian separatists are believed responsible for shooting down the plane. Gary Lane has more.
Along the flight path of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, passports, clothing, and human bodies. Some passengers still found strapped into their seats. Rescue workers, including police officers and local coal miners, sift through the debris in eastern Ukraine, all looking for clues on what may have caused the crash. But world leaders say the cause is clear.
Not an accident blown out of the sky.
This looks less like an accident than a crime.
U.S. intelligence officials say the Boeing 777 was shot down by a surface-to-air missile as it flew over eastern Ukraine from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. The pilot was forced to fly a more northerly route because of thunderstorms, and that took the plane and all 295 passengers on a path over territory occupied by Russian separatists. Witnesses described loud explosions, and one villager 25 miles from the Russian border said there was fighting, and then he heard shooting in the sky. U.S. federal aviation officials and FBI investigators are heading to the crash site. The separatist rebels say they've found most of the recording devices. The concern now that they'll turn those over to the Russians. That may likely lead to a biased investigation. That's because the Russians have been accused of supplying the separatists with arms to fight the Ukrainian government. Did the supplied armaments include surface-to-air missiles? And are the rebels responsible for the shoot-down? Rebels deny responsibility, but the Ukrainian government says it intercepted a phone call in which separatists at the crash scene reportedly told Russian military intelligence, quote, "We have shot down a plane."
An international team must have full access to the crash site, and no one should interfere with the area or move any debris, including the black box.
Meanwhile, back in Amsterdam, at least one couple was thankful they didn't board Malaysia Flight 17.
We were supposed to be in that flight, and it's obviously, something watching over us and said, no, don't get on that flight.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
President Obama is coming under fire and criticism for a lack of public attention to the 298 lives lost from the crash.
Obviously, the world is watching reports of a downed passenger jet near the Russia-Ukraine border. And it looks like it may be a terrible tragedy.
The 40-second nod to the disaster caught public attention, and some media outlets accuse him of, quote, going AWOL on the topic. Many people took to Twitter saying the president missed the point by just calling it a tragedy. A Boston Globe reporter tweeted, quote, "Obama in sum, a plane crashed. It may be tragic. We're trying to see if U.S. citizens were on board. Hey, great to be in Delaware." Meanwhile, John McCain called the crash an outrageous and incredible act of terrorism. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said it was, quote, not an incident, but a terrorist act. Both Russian and Ukrainian officials deny responsibility for the crash.
After 10 days and 2,000 Hamas rocket attacks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Israel launched a ground operation into the Gaza Strip. Israeli and tanks and troops have moved in, seeking to destroy terrorist tunnels and hideouts. So far, more than 20 Palestinians have been reported killed and one Israeli soldier in that fighting. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from the Israeli-Gaza border.
Israeli tanks and foot soldiers crossed the border fence into Gaza late Thursday evening, as seen in this footage from the IDF. The ground operation began several hours ago, and except for the occasional flare, Gaza City is locked in total darkness. And in that darkness, Hamas and Israel are locked in a life-and-death struggle. From midnight to mid-morning Friday, Israel attacked more than 100 terror targets throughout the Gaza Strip. The morning after the ground campaign began, explosions are still being heard from Gaza City as the IDF continues the next stage in Operation Protective Edge to stop rocket fire from Hamas-controlled territory. The IDF sent messages to Gazans to leave their homes in areas near the border and places of fighting. They warned them Israel would be using massive firepower. Israel says the goal of the extended operation is to uncover terror tunnels, destroy the Hamas infrastructure, and return quiet to southern Israeli communities.
The goal remains the same. The goal is to protect our people. I mean, over the last 10 days, we've had some 1,500 rockets fired by the terrorists in Gaza against our people. We've had barrage after barrage on our cities. And we are taking action, as I think any democratic government would do, to protect our people.
Friday morning, Hamas continued to fire rockets at southern Israeli communities, sending Israelis to their shelters.
Hamas have to be on the run. They cannot be an authority that is responsible for the Gaza Strip and expect to carry out terrorist attacks against us. They have to realize that there is a price to pay when you stand behind, initiate, and engage in terrorism.
For now, Israel seems to have limited backing from the international community. Even Egypt blamed Hamas for the ground incursion, saying that Hamas had refused attempts at a ceasefire. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Israeli-Gaza border.
Militants from the group known as the Islamic State are taking new steps in their attempt to turn huge parts of Iraq and Syria into a caliphate. Over the past month, the group has consolidated its holdover, a 435-mile stretch of territory from Syria into Iraq, seizing money from Iraqi banks estimated in the tens of millions of dollars, and capturing almost all the major oil and gas fields of eastern Syria. Now they're trying to act like a government, fixing roads, policing traffic, running courts, and even setting up an export system to smuggle crude oil. The Islamic group has also been seizing the houses of Christian and Shiite families who fled Mosul and giving some of them to Sunni families.
They call it the blue flu. That's when police call in sick to protest a city policy. That's what's happening in Memphis right now, and it's just the latest negative impact from Obamacare. Chuck Holton has that story.
Hundreds of police cars sitting idle in one of the highest crime cities in the nation. It's just the latest unintended consequence of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, that went into effect this year. The Memphis City Council recently decided to cut health care benefits to city employees and retirees. It's a move that will deliver a devastating blow to retired police and firefighters. The change will raise premiums by 20% for existing employees and cut some uninsured spouses. But the real pain will be felt by retirees who are being dropped altogether.
Now you're looking at putting people in a position where they either got to choose to eat and get their medicine or versus their insurance.
Thomas Malone is the president of the Memphis Firefighters Association.
By saying that they had to pay 100% of a premium, that their part would go, for a family, would go from about $320, $325 a month to about between $1,600 and $1,800 a month.
Police and firefighters are also angry that the city's new health care policy wasn't completely written before it was voted on and passed, reminding Malone of the Affordable Care Act itself.
There you go. You pass something and nobody read it, that's what we got here. You know, we got a smaller version of what occurred in D.C., and that's what's happening here.
Beale Street here in downtown Memphis is the hot spot for nightlife on a weekend. Typically, on a weekend night like this, there would be 70 or 80 police officers canvassing this area. But tonight, there's at least a third less than that. That's because many of the officers in Memphis are calling in sick to protest the changes to their health care policy.
The city has had to bring in sheriff's deputies to make up the difference. Meanwhile, the police union is considering litigation. Clyde Keenan represents the city's retired police officers.
Well, we're going to be asking for an injunction in court to prohibit the city from going forward with this plan at all. The retirees that we've got, particularly those in their 70s and 80s, this would be a catastrophic hit. We literally would have people dying without medical care. Doctors are not going to see these people free of charge.
This appears to be part of a larger trend. Keenan claims the city administration met with officials in Washington before unveiling their plan.
Our administration has met with the people in Washington and apparently got the idea to force our people onto the Affordable Care Act. But most of our people are not eligible for affordable care.
City employees across America routinely opt out of Social Security, instead choosing to fund their own pensions and insurance. But if these kinds of changes take hold, many more retired public servants could find themselves looking at a very difficult road ahead. From Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Chuck Holton for for CBN News.
A Denver bakery owner is appealing an order that forces his business to make wedding cakes for gay couples. Jack Phillips has asked the Court of Appeals to reverse the order he received from the Colorado Civil Rights Commission back in May. An administrative law judge upheld that decision. It started after a gay couple sued Phillips's Masterpiece Cake Shop in 2012. He had refused to make a cake to celebrate their marriage because of his Christian faith. Phillips' attorney says he is an artist and he should not be forced to use his talents to support messages he opposes.
Coming up, it can wipe out an entire coastline, strike with barely any warning, and scientists say it's just a matter of time. Meet the men and women who are protecting America from tsunamis.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Residents of a small Washington town and a nearby hospital are evacuating as wildfires close in on their homes. The county sheriff reports there have been no injuries so far. Fire officials have no estimate of how many houses have burned in the entire county, but some 40 homes have been reported destroyed thus far.
You're just looking at a fire that just came down over the hill, and it's probably going to wipe out all these houses right here. Mine is right up there, and it's under attack too, so I had to leave. I'm just trying to get these kids out of here.
We got all the family and the dogs out, and a house can be replaced. It's really something. It's even last night. I mean, it's way worse now, but last night it really looked like the cauldron of hell.
The sheriff said this is the worst fire he's seen in his 30 years on the force.
A powerful typhoon struck off the southern coast of China today. Typhoon Ramasan already killed at least 54 people in the Philippines. And before the storm struck in China, the southern region was already dealing with flooding from heavy rains, which killed at least 18 people. More than 26,000 people were evacuated from the island of Hainan ahead of the storm. Chinese officials say the typhoon is the most powerful storm in at least 9 years.
3 years ago, a monster tsunami hammered Japan with waves that topped 130 feet. And in 2004, a tsunami killed more than 200,000 people.
And that was one of a storm that was as powerful as 23,000 atomic bombs. But what about the United States? Are we prepared for such a disaster? Mark Martin traveled to Alaska to find out.
December 26, 2004. A magnitude 9 earthquake generates the world's deadliest tsunami in recorded history. The quake happened around 7 in the morning. By noon, the Indonesian tsunami killed more than 230,000 people as huge waves flooded coastlines around the Indian Ocean basin. It was a wake-up call for scientists.
One of the things we learned from that is that all coastal areas, no matter what we consider the threat, should be protected by a tsunami warning system.
Scientists at the West Coast and Alaska Tsunami Warning Center now also monitor the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, all potential targets. After the Indonesian tsunami, the U.S. stationed 2 scientists 24 hours a day at our warning centers, and the government invested heavily in tsunami detection equipment. The technology to monitor tsunamis has improved dramatically since 2004. Thanks in part to new forecasting software and computer modeling techniques, accuracy and warning times have improved.
When I first started here in 1986, our requirement was to get warnings out in 15 minutes. Today we We average less than 3 minutes, right at 3 minutes for our response capabilities for events that are near U.S. or Canadian areas.
One example of advanced technology that's improved warning speed and accuracy is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's DART Tsunami Detection Buoy. DART stands for Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunami. Before the 2004 tsunami, only 6 buoys floated in the ocean. Now the U.S. has close to 40. They can measure a tsunami wave as small as 1 centimeter in the open ocean. The information is sent back to a warning center where scientists use computer technology to process it and then issue a forecast.
Today we can do a much better job of saying, your wave is going to arrive in 2 hours, 35 minutes approximately, and it's going to be 3 feet high.
No matter how sophisticated the technology, if people ignore the warnings, lives will be lost. That's where education comes in. As the NOAA's Tsunami Program Manager for the Alaska region, it's Cindy Preller's job to get the word out.
We spend a lot of time with the kids in the schools because we've learned that children are the best teachers. And we have several interviews from children that have been through disasters, and so we really work with the kids as much as we can because the kids will actually teach their parents.
Lessons include if you feel the ground shaking, duck, cover, hold, and count for 20 seconds. And if you're near the ocean, evacuate quickly.
We have, in Japan's case, in 2011, less than 2 minutes when the wave was actually arriving. So, you have to know what to do immediately as soon as you feel the ground shaking.
Scientists say a good rule to follow is to head 100 feet above sea level or a mile inland. Don't wait for sirens or other warnings.
No community is tsunami proof, but population centers can become what's called tsunami ready. I'm here along the coastline of the community of Seward, Alaska, where city leaders have set the example in making sure residents are prepared.
David Squires is a retired fire chief of Seward. On his watch, the city became an official tsunami-ready community by meeting communication and safety requirements established by NOAA's National Weather Service.
It's not if, it's when. It will happen again. And we've got to be prepared for that. There's an earthquake every day in the state of Alaska, someplace.
Around town, you'll find sirens, evacuation information, and signs marking the tsunami evacuation route and rendezvous area. Emergency managers here take it very seriously.
These are the guys that make the program work. Annually, we do a live code test every year to coincide with the anniversary of the Great Quake in '64.
March 27th, 1964. A large earthquake generated a deadly tsunami which destroyed the Seward coastline. Public Works Director W.C. Casey was 12 years old at the time and evacuated with his family.
My dad actually afterwards said that as we were going through the boat harbor area and up the hill, he actually saw the tidal wave coming behind us. Any coastal community, it's devastating, the power and awesomeness of a tsunami. It's amazing what that power will do in regards to infrastructure, and people are like ants in a tsunami.
That's why scientists work to hone their tsunami forecasting skills and encourage coastal dwellers and visitors to get educated and heed the warnings. Mark Martin, CBN News, Palmer and Seward, Alaska.
Up next, Persecuted, the must-see movie about an evangelist framed for murder after taking a stand for religious reform.
The new movie Persecuted opens in theaters today. It's about a well-known and respected evangelist who finds himself framed for murder and on trial.
That's what happens after he refuses to back a senator's proposition calling for sweeping religious reform. Wendy Griffith spoke with writer-director Daniel Lusko about the film.
There are those who claim that your ministry is intolerant, that your crusades may even threaten the freedoms of others.
Freedom is fragile and costly and must constantly be defended.
Daniel, what inspired you to write Persecuted?
The Holy Spirit inspired me to write Persecuted. I woke up one morning and it was there. The government was trying to take control of everything, including the very source that gave our country its foundation, which is biblical truth.
I cannot water down the gospel to advance.
James Remar plays lead character, evangelist John Luther.
Tell me about John Luther.
John Luther is the hero of our story, and he becomes a major evangelist at the level of a Billy Graham at a time when America becomes an unwelcoming environment for the gospel. And he's discredited. He is tarnished.
So, John, what is your opinion of the primary tenets of the Faith and Fairness Act?
Fox News anchor Gretchen Carlson and I both have roles in Persecuted. She as the news anchor who questions John Luther's motives, and myself as a legal expert who talks about Luther's checkered past.
And leaving the scene of an accident. Talk about a relapse. So basically you have a famous evangelist, John Luther, who is framed for murder by a member of Congress because he's standing in the way of the sweeping religious reform. Is this really fantasy, or is this something that you could actually envision happening in America?
It really is beginning because we allow ourselves to be silenced in the name of political correctness.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Wow.
What a story, I tell you.
Our very own Wendy Griffith.
I know, hitting the big screen. We'll be watching this weekend. Be sure to check it out. Stay with us. We are coming right back with more CBN News Today.
Finally today, some unusual health news.
It is not just American people who are obese, so are their pets. And that's led to a rise of fat camps for fat cats and dogs. Take a look at this photo there. 53% of dogs are overweight or obese. And for cats, nearly 58% are fat. And those obese pets can have the same diseases as obese people, like diabetes, joint problems, heart disease, and a shorter lifespan. One reason? Owners give their pets an extra snack or two during the day. And get this, now luxury pet hotels and spas across the country will customize a fitness program for a pudgy dog or fat cat.
A spa program for a pet. Okay.
Money to burn.
That's going to do it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Every day, people are connecting on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Now you can be part of the conversation and connect on topics you care about through 700 Club Interactive. Log on to Facebook, Twitter, or go to YouTube and share your opinions, your prayer requests, and your videos while making friends in our community.
Well, welcome to the show.
Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. 700 Club Interactive. Be a part of the show.